And welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Minecraft Ed After Chat. This is the place where we come and we hang out after the Minecraft Ed chat, and we talk with our hosts of the evening about the highlights of that chat. Tonight's chat was hosted by the wonderful PickleBerry and at Saul Garza over on Twitter. And the discussion was all about creative mode versus survival. So the different modes in Minecraft. There's a couple of housekeeping things that I want to cover first of all before I go ahead and introduce everybody involved in this chat. And the first thing is this. Minecraft Ed is changing. All right? It's changing for the better. We've noticed a divide in the communities, and not necessarily a divide, but we have the Minecraft Edu hashtag and the Minecraft Ed hashtag that we had set up. We've been discussing over the past couple of weeks with a lot of people about this particular phenomenon. We've got two separate chats, all with the same agenda, the same objective, which is to help empower educators in the world of Minecraft to start using it in more and useful and unique ways and sharing resources. So as of June the 28th, Minecraft Ed will no longer be the hashtag that we use. It will be Minecraft Edu. With everybody's blessing in the educational ecosystem, we are going to transfer over there. Hopefully that will enable a larger audience. And as well, it's just going to enable us to really align the two hashtags together. So Minecraft Ed will be no more. If you still are on there, we'll still be tweeting out to it and getting everybody to come over to the Minecraft Edu. But it's just a more comfortable way of doing things. So that's the first little area of tie-up. The second thing is just how we run this after chat. If you do have questions, we will be keeping an eye on the Q&A section, so please don't hesitate to ask your questions. Also, we do run the Minecraft Ed chats every single week. So hopefully you guys can join us using hashtag Minecraft Ed up until June the 28th, every single Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m. And we thank you very much for joining us. So let me introduce to you our host of the evening. Well, I'll introduce our co-founder first of all. Mark, you can stop sharing your screen now.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Mark Grundell, he's the co-founder of Minecraft Ed Chat, along with myself, Garrett Zimmer of PB Jelly Games, and then we'll go ahead and we'll let PickleBerry introduce herself. Mark?
Hi.
Oh, hey, I'm Mark. I don't have much to say tonight. Yeah, I just want to go ahead and get right into the meat of things. So let's introduce PickleBerry. Thank you so much for joining us on tonight's chat. Great experience. We were not able to have Saul with us, but Pickle, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you wanted to say? Introduce yourself.
There was nothing that I really. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. There's nothing like specifically that I wanted to say, but yeah, I'm Pickle. I just like really love this chat, and it's an absolute like honor for me to be able to do this. Like I absolutely love this.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Your voice and your contribution is always so valuable, and I really love working with you on this chat and just getting your insight into these questions and helping us develop the questions. It was a great experience for us.
Absolutely. And one thing that we do want to make note of is we love to set up these chats where it's very student driven. All the questions were asked specifically and created by PickleBerry and Saul Garza. So big round of support if you're out there watching this to both of them. They're definitely worth a follow at _Saul_Garza on Twitter and at PickleBerry on Twitter. So go and follow these two wonderful students. Their student voice is passionate, it's true, and it's resounding. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the first question that we had in the chat today. And what were some of the highlights that you guys saw in there? What were some of the things that you wanted to pick out? So Q1 was, if I can pull it up here, one of the worst aspects of survival or adventure or creative mode when you're using it in a classroom environment. So what came out for you guys as prominent in that question?
Kristen, do you want to start this off, or do you want me to take it?
You can start it off.
So, I mean, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Saul, who really did come up with this question, and it kind of derived from his class, his innovations class that he has. great question, and I thought that in looking at the worst aspects, and then with that follow-up question of how can we use them to our advantage, uh, really pushes our thinking. And when we think about the worst aspects, we think, well, we got nothing to lose with these things, so we might as well take a risk and make them better. And that was sort of just some of the thought that went into designing that question. And we had a lot of great controversy pop up. Mr. Ullman, uh, another great participant, he mentioned that students they always want to play the way that they want to play. And I think that was a great comment. He also brought up the various ranges in ability in whatever mode you're playing. But I guess that comes into play more in survival mode. And Rachel Burkett from West Virginia, she had mentioned that students, just especially in creative mode, they spend way too much time on their builds. So those are some of the big downfalls that I saw in tonight's chat.
Okay. So how about you, PickleBerry?
Those are actually the main two I was gonna point out.
Okay, so what are your thoughts when you're in survival then, or creative, or when you're using it for an educational purpose, if you do use it in your classroom at the moment? What do you think, goes through a student's mind in terms of what's the worst aspect in survival versus creative or adventures?
Well, I think that like in adventure mode, like the kids aren't like they have so many limits, and you aren't really able to like really show your creativity because in adventure mode, yes, it's like more strict towards the learning part of it because you can only do so much, but then again, that does limit like how creative the students are able to be in the classroom to get like more enjoyment out of it.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
And then,
so what do you think is the worst aspect then?
for adventure mode?
For adventure or creative or survival, you make your pick.
Probably for adventure, I would just say that the worst aspect is that kids aren't able to be as creative as they might like to be.
Okay.
So Pickle, I know that you are on Team Creative. So what do you think is? I'm gonna really push you here, but what do you think are some of the worst aspects of creative mode, especially in the classroom?
Probably like what Rachel had been saying, like he pointed out that kids can just go off and do like whatever they want, because that's part of what I was thinking about too, is that because there's like adventure and creative I think are like complete opposites. Like adventure you don't get enough creativity, but
I want to jump in here for a quick second because a lot of this kind of comes into the terminology that we use, and there are 4 different types of game modes in Minecraft. One is creative mode, one is survival mode, one is adventure mode, and one is spectator mode, where you can fly through blocks and you can fly through things, and you're an invisible person and you can see everything that's going on, but you can't be hit, you can't be damaged, anything like that. A lot of clarity needs to be focused around what I mean when I talk adventure mode or what somebody else means when we talk adventure mode versus survival mode. Adventure is really a game mode for those who don't yet understand it, where you can only break blocks using the correct tool that you're given. So if you're in adventure mode, you can't break anything around you. Nothing is breakable unless you can break wool if you have shears. You can break stone if you have a pickaxe. So a lot of it's about what you're given at the beginning of that. And adventure mode is primarily geared towards a boxed-in created game, so a mini-game style. But I think, Pickle, what you're talking about more is survival mode. Am I correct? Or were you talking about this sort of game mode? Because I don't think adventure mode really fits unless you create those boundaries and those borders and cause and consequence. But I might be misunderstanding.
Yeah, saying like in adventure mode because then you're not able to like do any building or collect any blocks. Like in survival mode, you can do that, even though it's tricky. But it's just like in adventure mode, like you can't do like anything unless the teacher had set it as that.
that particular objective. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
All
So
right.
I like that answer, though. I like that, picking apart sort of the adventure mode and creative mode. One of the things that does pop into play here that a couple of people were mentioning is that a lot of teachers find they have to spend a lot of time corralling their students in, and I think this becomes a fault of every single mode. So I wanted to point this one out in very strict detail that, you know, kids will always go off and try and do their own thing. And it is our responsibility as an educator to really guide it in. And we can do that in a couple of different ways. And I've seen some amazing things, you know, if you use engagement tactics, if you've used game-based tactics, gamified tactics and mechanics to drive your students into that engaging environment so that you're basically pushing them to go a certain direction, but they're actually leading the way. The other way is just to put up those blocks and the barriers and the boundaries that you want to have set. A lot of talk came into prep. Prep becomes the most important thing. I've got it stuck on you, PickleBerry. I'm sorry. Prep really becomes the most important thing. So whether you're prepping your map beforehand, you're prepping your lesson environment beforehand to put those rules and boundaries in place, or whether you're just having that conversation with your class to prep them beforehand and say, look, this is what we need to get done. This is how we need to look at it. Let's go in and get it done so that we all accomplish something together. Those become, I think, the most important points to any of the game modes.
Yeah, and that is the job of the teacher. I mean, you need to be prepared in your lesson, and it's also that pre-work, that setting up the norms, setting up your expectations. Those are all things that need to go into the lesson. I mean, Minecraft is just another tool in our toolbox, and we need to set it up in order for the lessons to be successful. So no matter what mode we put our kids in, we need to establish those norms so that, you know, we're working in a community, and that we're able to you know, be able to work through our procedures and what we're supposed to be doing, and so that we know our expectations, just like in any other lesson.
Yeah. So we've hammered on question 1. Let's see if we move to question 2, which is with the negatives. And again, let's pick out one of the big negatives that were there, which is, you know, it's hard to keep students focused and engaged. It's in survival mode versus creative mode. What the challenge is, you know, kids keep building. The amount of time that they spend building is just, it takes over the entire classroom period in some cases. So the question 2 was, how can we use this, or have you used it to your advantage? So let's focus on that one. Mark, fire out the first response.
Well, I kind of went back and forth with Rachel on this one because she had brought up the time constraint, and so just limiting time. And going back to our art chat, we talked about in design thinking that we need constraints, we need limiters, and those limiters actually extend our creativity. Because if we just have unlimited time and unlimited resources, there's no challenge there. We need to be able to push ourselves. So just putting in some sort of a time limiting factor can actually push ourselves to be more creative. In addition to limiting time, you know, what else could we limit? Could we limit the number of resources in a way? Could we limit the different types of blocks that can be used, or the different tools that we can use? Those are all limiting factors which at first seem like a constraint, but then can really be used to push our creative thinking. You know, if you're only able to use a certain number of blocks, you're going to have to build something in such a way that it's aesthetically pleasing if we're working in creative mode, because you may not have access to a full inventory. That was one thing that came up.
Survival, you really hammer yourself into this. Okay, I'm going to use what I have at my disposal, which is true to life in reality.
And in survival, I think time is just as important.
Okay, well, stick with one. PickleBerry, what do you think? So, based on some of the challenges that were coming out, what do you think it becomes a very important factor in using these things to our advantage?
Well, Sorry, I'm just like.
So how do we take? Let's rephrase it to your response that you had come up with in the last question, which was in adventure mode. It becomes a scenario where there isn't a lot that you can do, which kind of traps you into this environment that somebody wants you to be in and focused on what they want you to learn. So what do you think is an advantage of that, or how can a teacher use that type of environment, such as adventure mode, to their advantage?
Well, they could like use like command blocks and maybe edit up like the original adventure mode a little bit, and like they can set up like the learning plan that they want to get through to the children, but then still be able to find ways around it and make keep it like interesting and everything.
Interesting.
By like adding like little.
Repeat that last part, please.
And then like they would be able to add lines here and there, and just like because then like the kids are still able to get the learning thing out of it, but the teachers may be able to add like a bit more creative aspect to it.
It's a very valid point. There is some functionality that can be used there. I want to point out something interesting that you said, and one of the reasons why I love working with adventure mode and building adventure maps that are plug and play that can be used to teach pedagogical content is we know as educators that the pedagogy and how we approach a particular subject requires a certain type of learning to really get that learning done, or a certain type of teaching to get that learning done. Some of the lessons that we teach are very skill-based. Some of the lessons that we teach are very critical thinking-based. And so with adventure, it does actually present an interesting opportunity for you to have that control and really drive the learning along the pathway of pedagogy that suits that particular subject. But very, very good point, PickleBerry. I want to make a point that Mr. Ullman made. And it kind of drives back to a topic that didn't necessarily come up in the first question. I didn't state it, but I'll state it here. Is he says survival should have students banding together. And I think it's a really interesting point because in survival it does become that resource-driven, very tough to get things accomplished, which adds that level of challenge and requires that extra level of teamwork. And that extra level of, focus on, look, I don't have a lot of time to do this. Will I be able to get it done? So you get that true, passionate innovation going on when you get a group of students in there. So I think, just another one in the frame of survival, which, you know me, I'm in band camp from survival. But again, enough of that one. Mark, do you want to take us off for Q3?
Yeah, sure. Q3. Oh man, what happened? I lost my question cards. You know what? You're gonna have to go ahead and answer that. Ask that one.
No worries. So whose role is it to pick the game mode when playing Minecraft for educational purposes, and why?
So this was a good one. This sparked, I think, a lot of debate. I think that we had educators passionate in both camps that it's the teacher's choice. Teacher's the one crafting the lesson. Teacher has specific goals and purposes in mind. Should be very teacher-driven. On the other end, we had some educators who felt it should be very student-driven and that it should be completely student's choice, student's voice, and they pick the mode. It's their learning. So I felt that we had strong voice on both sides. Gabe Howard, another great student who's actually going to be co-hosting next week, he felt that students should have a say and offer their voice, but ultimately it's the teacher's decision. So I mean, we had all walks on that topic, and it's a tough one. It's a tough one as an educator. Do I let my kids pick the game mode, or do I say we are playing in this game mode? It's a challenge, and I don't think that it's 100% one way or the other. I think that we walk a fine line, and sometimes it's appropriate for kids to pick the game mode, but at times it's when you have a specific learning goal in mind, you need to have that game mode set, and that's what it's going to be. That's my personal feeling.
Okay.
Want to add anything, Garrett?
I'll add once PickleBerry is ready. PickleBerry, what do you think? Whose choice should it be and why for the game mode that's being used?
I think it should really be like a joint decision between both the teachers and the students
You're
because,
sideways, by the way.
huh?
Your camera is sideways.
Uh,
That's okay. It's not a big deal.
If we can watch Minecraft, we can watch this. You're fine.
Okay. So I was saying, I think it should be like a joint decision between both the students and the teachers because, like, the students are the ones that are learning it, so it needs to be, like, taken from their perspective because if they don't enjoy what's being taught, then they may not take anything from it. But then again, it is the teachers who are the ones making it and trying to make it suitable for each child, but that can't always happen.
Okay. Excellent point. You know, I saw the exact same thing that Mark saw. Realistically, there's some in the band camp of teacher driven, some in the band camp of student driven, and I think they both come from truly relevant perspectives and relevant points. Number one, in the student choice, the student-centric model of that, it's about student engagement. And we have to give credit to student engagement on that. This is their game. And we really do have to make sure, and that's part of the challenge in our classrooms today, is how do we get more engaging content driven into the classrooms? How do we make students learn and want to learn, not just learn because we're telling them they have to learn? On the flip side of the camp, it's the fact that, again, it goes back to pedagogy. We educators have to know, and do know, professionals in that field do know, look, this is the way that students will learn this particular topic best, right? This particular subject best. Mark, I'm sure you can attest to that. There are certain tactics and certain opportunities that come into play, or certain ways of teaching that come into play that actually support better social studies learning, that support better history learning versus the math side. So again, I think it really does have to be these debates where there's two on each camp. We really need to bring them into focus and say, look, you know, it really does have to be both. We have to say, look, and balance it and weigh it and say, look, you know, if my students really, really want this mode, but that mode is definitely not suited to them learning this particular subject in the best way, then I need to make that overarching decision and say, hey, we're going to play it in this mode, but let's still give a little bit of balance. And that's what I saw come out in that particular question.
Absolutely. I think we want to keep the game as authentic as possible for the kids. So if we have students who primarily play in creative mode, then we want to take that into consideration when, you know, selecting a mode. Additionally, you know, if we have students who thrive in survival or adventure mode, then we want to put them in those game modes. We want to keep it as authentic as possible for our students. But then again, at the same time, we also want to push our students out of their comfort zone sometimes. So sometimes we want to take that into consideration and then say, okay, well, we're going to switch modes up here for this time, just to keep everyone on their toes and to keep them challenged and to introduce them to new experiences, because I think that's my job as a teacher as much as anything else.
Absolutely.
All right, Pickle, any final thoughts on that question?
No, not really. I think you guys like covered it for the most part.
All right, so I'm going to jump into Q4. I found my question cards. How do you get to know your students and understand their gamer profiles and preferences? Garrett, you want to start with this one?
I'll start with this one, but you know, maybe it's better to. Well, I'll start with it, but then Pickle's going to have to get it rephrased in a different way.
Yeah, Pickle had a great response. I definitely want her sharing that in this.
Well, do you want to share it first, Pickle?
Sure. I was just saying that for this, like, to be able to get to know your students, you could try, like, the teachers themselves could try and set up, like, little questionnaires. Favorite parts in it is, what parts they don't really like about it and everything, and then maybe even have them make like a little paragraph about like what they would want to be like included if it was to become part of their education, like used in it.
Awesome point.
Yeah, I love the idea. You know, we give as a teacher, I give little inventory slash surveys for so many different things so that I can get to know my students. Why not have one for Minecraft or game-based learning in general, so that I can get to know my students? I love that, Pickle. I think that's a phenomenal idea, and I think that that point sort of resounded throughout the chat, where a number of educators really did appreciate that comment from you, and I foresee a lot of questionnaires driven on Minecraft and game-based learning coming in the fall, thanks to you.
Excellent. Well, no, I definitely agree with that point. I mean, again, it relates to how do you engage with people. You've got to ask them what makes
Yeah.
them happy.
Yeah.
Same thing in, in a sales background that I come from. There are salespeople out there who will push their agenda on somebody else and try to, oversell a particular product. When the reality is that the best approach to sales or to engagement, whether you're engaging a customer or anything, is to just ask what the customer wants and do your best to give it. In some
Yeah.
cases, you won't be able to give it to that customer, and that's okay. Again, as teachers, we don't always have to, as educators, it's not always about just giving the students what they want. We sometimes have to make that decision, but at least we're empowering them by asking them. So my response to this one, and how do you get to know your students and understand their gamer profiles and preferences, is really, it is about watching them. It's about understanding them. It's about asking those questions, finding out what makes them tick as a gamer. And I'm particularly preferential, and we tweeted it out. A couple of us made comments on it. I tweeted out a whole bunch of cards on it that we had prepared here. And it's Bartle's gamer psychology model. And it represents 4 different archetypes of gamers, namely the achiever, the socializer, the killer, and the explorer. There we go. And, really, if you start to understand how gamers game, then you're going to have a much better understanding of how students will engage with the content that you're creating. And if you can try your best to sort of align with those in mind, again, keeping in mind the pedagogical approaches that you know are going to work, then we've got a really, really good balance. But it all starts with asking those questions. Mark, back to you.
Yeah, and along with your cards, I had shared out a link to a quick 30-question quiz. You could take it in 2 or 3 minutes, and that was a compliment of Doug Kiang. I hope I'm saying his name right. A great educator in Hawaii. He shared that with me. It's just a quick 30-question quiz. You can find out what you are most like. But what's interesting about this quiz is it produces a blended answer. So you see that you are a little bit of everything, but what are you predominantly? So I encourage you to look up that Bartle's quiz and check it out for yourself and see what your gamer psychology is. And just like when we give our kids a learning style quiz at the beginning of the year, this is just another type of getting to know you activity. I do want to say that this is not definitive. It's the same thing with learning styles. Just because a kid identifies himself as a hands-on learner or identifies himself as a visual learner, it's not set in stone, and it's not always going to be true. So just take that with a grain of salt, but it is just one more thing to consider when getting to know your students and picking a game mode in this case.
Excellent.
All right. Q5. This kind of leads perfectly into it. It's almost like we planned it. What should we consider when choosing a game mode in Minecraft? Give examples.
Do you want me to start with this one, or how about PickleBerry?
Pickle, you good starting this one?
Sure. When you're really considering it, I really think that you need to figure out what could best be used when like making the actual learning plan itself, and then like from there you can try and edit it a little bit to fit what the students want, but mainly it's up to like how the learning plan is like going to be built in my mind. That should be like the main thing that you consider. And really I think that everything that's been like covered in this should be considered when you're deciding like what how you're gonna like make it and everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mark, how about you?
You know, I think it comes back to the students. You know, we need to consider our students and the needs of our students. And that may be driven from the social curriculum, it may be driven from the academic curriculum. But what is it that our students need at this moment? Do they need to work on some social aspect of the curriculum? Do I have a specific academic goal in mind for my students when choosing a game mode? Because as you mentioned earlier, Garrett, there are just times where certain game modes will teach certain skills better, and in certain subjects may lend themselves better to one particular game mode. So it always comes back to the students. What do my students need at this moment? And how is that game mode going to serve their needs? That's what it comes down to for me.
I don't think the point can be stated any better. You know, that's the objective of any learning theory research out there is, okay, how do people learn? And it's really it's about the person. It's about the individual doing the learning. And if we can, you know, align our mode or our choices or the way that we approach our educational content to that, then it's going to benefit everybody. I want to point out one of the things that Saul Garza, since he's unable to be here with us, stated, and this was such a powerful point. Many subjects need a bit of both, as I see it. And this was reiterated and supported by one of my favorite educators using Minecraft in the classroom, John Miller. And John Miller stated exactly the same thing. He likes to use both. He likes to get his kids in to design an interesting little world, right? Do the creation, do the collaboration, get that done to a large degree. He's got a build team to help him with that and do all of that. But then at the end, he brings it back out and he puts them into the survival world, a place where there's challenge, where that learning can be centered and concreted, and there is a emotional response to that learning. And that is the key of any good game. As a game developer, that is 101 games. Create emotion. If you can create emotion, you tie the subject directly to the activity, and it doesn't fail to stick. So, again, use both. Don't be afraid of using survival. Don't be afraid. Don't stick yourself in one block. In one block. That's it. Use them both to your advantage, and that really the onus comes on you to know them.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the job of the teacher.
Yeah,
and to create that environment that's comfortable in order for the students to open up to get to know you. And I think I just I know we're running short on time, but I would just want to bring that point up as well. John Miller, Irv Spanish, they both brought up great points about having the kids build together, collaborate together. I think Irv was talking about spawning chupacabras and having the kids, band together to defeat a common enemy. John Miller had his students construct a structure that's going to be fortified and hold up against mobs, and then he goes and spawns mobs on all the sides to see if their structure holds up together. So just that joint effort of first maybe doing something in creative mode and then testing it out in survival mode. I love that, and that banding together, that sense of unity and camaraderie. Pickle, did you want to add any final thoughts?
Not that I can think of right now.
All right. Well, then we may as well tie it off here.
Yeah.
We want to thank you all for joining us for the Minecraft Ed After Chat. I know there are a few people joined in the first half of the After Chat, but for those of you guys who have stuck it through to the very end, maybe come by for the highlights and whatnot, just keep in mind a couple of things. We do run Minecraft Ed Chats every single Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. We're always inviting new hosts, so if you have an opportunity or you have a particular area of interest or an area of focus that you use in Minecraft and you think it would make an absolutely amazing chat, please don't hesitate to reach out to at Mark Grundell or at M Grundell, I should say, on Twitter, or myself at PB Jelly Games, and we'd be happy to take those responses and look into them. Hopefully, get you on as a host. The other thing is, go ahead.
I just want to say next week's chat is being hosted by phenomenal educator, Speary Howard. It's me, Speary, and her son, Gabe Howard, who is also a participant in many of our chats and many of our other game-based learning chats. So we're really looking forward to challenging all students, especially with a focus on gifted and talented students next week with Speary and Gabe Howard. So we're really looking forward to that chat. And did you want to talk about the transition real quick, Garrett?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to shut it down as soon as we tie this up. Any other final thoughts?
I'm good.
All right. So transition, other thing, Minecraft Ed is transitioning over on July the 28th to Minecraft Edu. So we're going to realign the communities, and we're going to get over to the Minecraft Edu community. The other last point that I wanted to make, we'll pop that up on the screen. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah, it's fine.
The other comment that I wanted to make is, again, as with all of these chats, there's a lot of ideas being thrown out. Sometimes not everybody sits on the same side of the path. So if you do have any ideas that you think differ from what we've talked about here, or anything that you want to share, you can always feel free to do so in the comments down below on the YouTube section. We do check those as regularly as possible, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the next Twitter chat. So Minecraft Ed next week, Tuesday, the what date? The 7th.
We are into June.
Tuesday the 7th. My goodness. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you guys all very much for joining in. Mark, thank you so much. PickleBerry, thank you so much. And we will see you guys next week.
All right. Good night. Thank you so much.